Hello, my name is Scott, and I'm going to talk about the problems that I've had with this gun over the years that I've owned it. Talking about the parts that are broken on it or just wore out. This will give the owners of some of these M11-9 submachine guns an idea of the parts that will wear out or break over time. Now, you're going to ask why I would be an expert at this. Well, I bought this gun back in 1990, so I've had it for over 30 years. I put over 30,000 rounds of ammo through it. So I'm just going to give you guys the benefit of what I've seen over all these years with this particular gun. First of all, what I really love about this M11-9 here is that it's one of the most simple submachine guns out there, and its simplicity makes it reliable. If you look at this gun, it's just meat and potatoes. And there's nothing on this gun that doesn't need to be there. It's a lean, mean killing machine. Now, there's a lot of people that complain about this collapsible stock that came with the gun. And most people say that it has a tendency to collapse when you're shooting it. Now, I've never had that problem. It's always been plenty strong for me. The only thing I can guess is that either the notch where the stock mechanism fits in is worn out on the stock maybe, or maybe the spring and the stock latch mechanism is weak. That's the only thing I can think of that would cause this to collapse while you're shooting it. Or maybe that the person who pulled the stock out didn't get it to latch all the way. You always make sure that stock latch is in there. Now, what I like about this stock is that it's nice and compact. It makes the gun very compact, and it's free. It came with the gun. You don't have to pay another $250, $60 or whatever to get an aftermarket stock for it. But I'm just saying those are the problems that some people have. I've never had that problem. This is an original upper on this gun. I've used 4 different uppers on this gun over the years I've owned it. I've used the 6-inch barrel uppers, the 10-inch barrel uppers. I've never had any of the Lage manufacturing uppers on this gun. One of the problems with these top cocking original uppers here is this cocking handle here. This is what they called, or it's known as, the hockey puck cocking handle. And people complain that it's hard to grab a hold of when you cock the gun. And you can see now that it's unloaded. Well, people complain that it's sort of hard to cock the gun. Yeah, it's possible, and it's also possible if you grab it the wrong way that you can actually cut yourself on the cutout for the cocking handle. You just have to be careful when you cock the gun on these guns. The other problem I've heard with this hockey puck cocking handles here is I've heard that some of these actually fractured and broke while the gun was firing. Now, you notice that this cocking handle will reciprocate with this bolt as you're shooting the gun. If this cocking handle actually fractured and broke and came flying off the gun, if it's in a backstroke, I've heard someone getting hit on the forehead with this gun, and I've never heard of anything really serious injuries. I've heard of knots, like bumps on the head because of that. But this is the original cocking handle for this gun, and I've never had that particular problem. The only thing I can guess is that if you're unlucky enough to have a hockey puck cocking handle where the metallurgy was bad, you can get hit with the thing. But I've never had that problem. I'm going to show you the actual problems that I've had with this particular gun here. The first thing with these guns is in the bolt. This is an original bolt assembly that came with this gun in 1990. The biggest problem that I have with this particular bolt is this. You see this? Watch this. I hate that. This is the firing pin retaining pin right here. And these original bolts, they actually had a fixed firing pin that was separate firing pin. Now most submachine guns, they actually have the firing pin machined into the bolt face, so you don't have to worry about a separate firing pin. Now, the second time I took this gun out shooting, for some reason I had to take the bolt out, and I lost this pin, so that ruined my day at the range, and I had to order another one of these pins. I think FTF Industries, they sell a replacement pin for like $7, so it's a good idea to have a couple of these. Now, these firing pins here, these are all made out of simple stamped steel, and I have heard that the tip on these sort of wear out over time. And if I look on mine, yeah, it's getting worn, but I've never had to replace it yet. A replacement of these, I believe, is less than $20, so it's a good idea to get a couple of these. I heard a couple of years ago that some guy made a stainless steel version of these which would be a little harder and would probably last forever. But these are the problems I had with the bolt. The only other problem I had with the bolt is anyone who's owned these guns for one of these M11-9 submachine guns would know that these damn buffers are one of the things that wear out the most. These buffers are made out of either some kind of rubber or plastic or some kind of synthetic material like urethane or something. And what these buffers do is they actually buffer the bolt when it comes back when you fire the gun, and it buffers the bolt from hitting the back of your receiver and causing damage. Now, over time, as you shoot these guns, these buffers get pounded to pieces. And every time you shoot your gun, or after you shoot your gun, every time you take your gun apart to clean it and service it, you should always check these buffers. And you're looking for any cracks or any kind of wear on the buffers. The original black buffers that came with these guns, they were known to dry out and crack and just fall apart. So always look at your buffer every time before you go to shoot it for any kind of wear. You can get replacement buffers from as little as $4 a piece if you buy them in quantity. You should always have a couple of these buffers laying, well, more than a couple, maybe 4 or 5 of them. But that's the biggest problem in the uppers. Like I said, I've used 4 different kinds of uppers with these guns, and I've never really. Most of the ammunition I've shot were my own reloads with lead bullets, and all of the barrels are still in good shape. I've never shot out any of these uppers. Now, as far as the lower is concerned, the things that you always want to look at when before you shoot your gun, every time you're cleaning it, is you just want to go over it and make sure that the mechanism is working properly. Make sure your selector is working properly. Make sure that your this retaining spring here is good. And you can pretty much tell what kind of condition the springs are in the action here. But one of the most important things you need to do is every time when you inspect your gun is you got to look at the edge on this sear here. Now, if you look right here, this is the edge of the sear. Okay, this is the edge of the sear here that catches the bolt. And when you pull the trigger, it'll release that bolt and fire. When you release the trigger, it'll catch that bolt if you're in full auto. And what happens is the edge of the sear wears out over time. And once that sear wears out, the edge of the sear here wears out too much, you can get a runaway. And a runaway on this gun is very dangerous because this is a gun that could shoot 1,400 rounds a minute. And you can cause actual injury and death. So always check the edge of the sear to see if it's worn out, to check for any extra wear on it. If there's any kind of extra wear on the edge of the sear, you need to replace the sear right away. Now, if you look at this sear, you will see that that this sear is stamped Lage on it. This is a sear that was manufactured by a company called Lage Manufacturing in Arizona. And this particular sear is better than the original sears that came with this gun. The reason why these sears, the edge of the sear has a tendency to wear out is first of all, this particular gun, the M11-9, is basically a stretched version of the original Ingram M11-380. And this M11 9mm gun, it uses the same sear that they have in the 380 gun. So you're using a much more powerful round in this gun. You're still using the same sear with the same amount of contact surface that would hold that bolt open. Your bolt on your 9mm is also much heavier than the bolt in the 380. So you can see that you would have more stress on these sears in the M11-9 than you would in the M11-380. The other problem is that the M11-9 here was produced between 1983 and 1986, around May 19th of 1986, when the machine gun ban went into effect. During that time, there were about 17,000 of these M11-9 submachine guns that were registered and are what are considered to be fully transferable. Now, out of that 17,000 guns, 14,000 of them were actually manufactured in 1986 during the first 5 months, from January 1st to May 19th. So they really were in a hurry to get these guns manufactured and registered before that May 19th cutoff date. And the problem was the original sears on these guns, they were just, they were cast and they were finished machined. And most of them were not properly heat treated on the edge of that sear. And they're soft. And I want to show you the difference here. What I have here is the last sear that I had to replace. And here you see the edge of that sear. And if you look real close, you'll see that edge is starting to get worn out. It's starting to get rounded off and peened a little bit. If you can see that sear, if my wife gets a good video of this, you can see how worn out that's starting to get. And that's why I replaced this sear. This is an original Cobray firearms sear, an original sear that would come with the gun. This right here is a brand new Lage sear that I bought. I actually bought 2 of these sears when I got this one, because I actually have a new in the box M11-9 I've never shot before, and I know that even though I never shot that gun, it still has the original soft sear in it. So I got this for that gun whenever I decide to shoot it. Now you look at the edge here on this, you can see the big difference between these two here. And you see this is a brand new sear, and how nice and squared off that edge is that holds that bolt open. And you can see how worn out this one is. So that's what you see is, this is what you're looking for, is you're looking for this edge here to start to be worn out and rounded off. And you don't want it to get too bad, because like I said, if it gets too bad, you'll cause a runaway and people can be hurt or killed. Okay, so that's important. So I've replaced, I think this is the 3rd sear I've had in this gun. So they last pretty well. The other problem I had in this gun, the part that actually failed in this gun, is after about 20,000 rounds, what I had was, when I had the gun in full auto, it would only fire bursts or semi-auto or just one shot, even when I had it in full auto. And what was happening is the disconnector was dropping off of the sear and it was letting it pop up, even though I was pulling the trigger in full auto. I ended up taking the internals apart, and what happened is the trigger spring here, this trigger spring that goes around the trigger and holds your disconnector. When I took this apart, I found that the trigger spring was actually cracked. It actually broke in the back, and when that cracked, it didn't put enough pressure on that disconnector to keep it down on the sear, to keep the sear from popping up. So I had to replace that trigger spring because it cracked after about 20,000 rounds. That's the only part that I had in this gun that really failed on me. The other thing, like I said, was the sear, and that just wore out over. That'll just wear out over time. I think that a replacement trigger spring is about $12, $13 now. The nice thing about these guns is all of these parts are easy to come by. You can get new replacement bolts. You can get new replacement bolts that doesn't have this stupid fixed firing pin, the separate firing pin. You can get new replacement bolts for these guns that does not have, that has the firing pin actually machined in the bolt, just like any other submachine gun. So that was the only real problems I've had on this gun. Some people complain that the original selector wears out. I haven't had that problem. You can buy a better one from Lage. I think he makes them. The reason why this is the Lage sear is better than the original sear is these Lage sears, these are machined out of solid bar stock instead of cast, and they are properly heat treated, at least from what I understand. So these Lage sears, they cost about $50 a piece, and that's cheap insurance in my opinion. I think that probably every one of these M11s 9 should have one of these Lage hardened sears in them. just for safety. That's just my opinion. So like I said, I've really had very few problems with this gun. The holes here for the pin that holds the uppers on, it's never egged out because these have been reinforced at the factory. I've never had any problems with the pins for the selector or anything like that. This is the original safety in this gun. I've never had any problem with the original safety. What I like about the safety here is you can just flick it up. You can flick it off just like that, and it's sort of easy to put on and off. So those are the only problems that I've really had with this gun. If you're going to pay $7,000 or $8,000 for one of these guns, it's a good idea. Buy yourself a whole internal parts kit. They're what, I'm not sure, they're like $300 or something like that now. So it's pretty much worth it. I wanted to talk about the magazines for just a minute here. These are the original magazines that were sold with these guns. These are made out of Zytel, which is plastic. Now the biggest problem with these guns is, well, they had two big problems with them. One of them is that they would crack where you see the flashing here, where it's like a mold marking. I guess these guns were sort of molded together, and where the mark is going down here, the early ones at least used to crack. Now I bought at least a dozen of these magazines when I first got the gun, and I've never had any of mine crack on me. What happens is these feed lips here are plastic, and over time they'll sort of spread out, and that's when they'll start causing jams. But it takes a long time for it to do that. The saving feature of these magazines, in my opinion, is that back in the early 90s, up until the first assault weapons ban, where they banned high-capacity magazines, in the early 90s, you could buy 4 of these plastic Zytel magazines for $33. That's a little over $8 a piece. So these were basically throwaway magazines. You buy these magazines, they may feed a couple thousand, maybe 5,000 rounds, and then just throw them away. Now recently there's a company called Shockwave, and they came out with metal magazines. This is a 30-round Shockwave magazine. This is an original Zytel, and you can see it's a little more compact, although it does hold 30 rounds, and this one holds 32. And this is the Shockwave 50-round magazine. So you got a nice 50-round magazine for these too. The problem with these Shockwave magazines is that the latest versions of these, that I just bought another couple of these a couple of weeks ago, and they wouldn't fit in my gun. I had to actually file down over here because there was a bulge in the metal over here. I had to file it down here and here for it to get it to fit in my gun. But once you get these Z-Mags, which is what these are called Z-Mags made by a company called Shockwave. Once you get these to fit, they shoot pretty good. They're very reliable, and they're metal, so they're not going to wear out easy. And I recommend these guns, I recommend these magazines, these Shockwave Z-Mags. The only problem that I have is you might have to do some fitting to get them to fit your gun. So I've gone over the problems that I've had with these guns. It's not that much. These are very reliable guns. And this is one of the reasons why this is one of the most popular entry-level submachine guns out there, or transferable machine gun. You can buy cheaper machine guns, but you can't buy one that is reliable and easier to find parts and accessories for than this guy right here. So that's all I have to say. Thank you to my wife for videotaping this, and that's it.